The ocean has swallowed countless ships, but few disappearances haunt history like that of the USS Cyclops, a massive Navy collier carrying over 300 men. She vanished in 1980 without a single distress call. No wreckage was ever recovered. To this day, her fate remains one of America's greatest maritime mysteries. The story of Cyclops isn't just about a ship lost at sea. It's about families left with no answers, a navy shaken by the unexplained, and a legend that grew into whispers of the Bermuda Triangle. More than a century later, the question still lingers. How could such a massive vessel simply vanish? The USS Cyclops was no ordinary ship. At over 500 feet long and displacing more than 19,000 tons, she was the largest vessel in the Navy when commissioned. Designed to carry coal for fueling America's growing fleet, she was a floating powerhouse. Her size and role made her disappearance all the more baffling. Commissioned in 1910, Cyclops quickly became essential. With global tensions rising, coal was the lifeblood of the Navy. She supplied battleships, cruisers, and distant bases. Traveling from the Caribbean to Europe, her capacity to transport massive cargo loads made her indispensable. Yet her career would end not with glory, but with silence. In early 1918, Cyclops embarked on what should have been a routine voyage. She carried more than 10,000 tons of manganese ore, a dense cargo used in steelmaking. Departing Brazil, she was bound for Baltimore. The cargo was heavy, but the ship had carried similar loads before. No one could have predicted it would be her last journey. The ship made stops in Rio de Janeiro and later Barbados. In both ports, witnesses noted she sat lower in the water than usual. Some crew members expressed concerns, whispering that the ore was poorly distributed. Overloading was one possibility, but still, no one imagined disaster was imminent. The Navy had full confidence in her strength. On March 4, 1918, Cyclops departed Barbados and set a course for Baltimore. It was the last time anyone saw her. She never arrived, never sent an SOS. She vanished somewhere in the waters between the Caribbean and the American East Coast, leaving behind one of the most enduring mysteries in naval history. The disappearance was immediate and shocking. A ship that large, with 306 souls aboard, should have left some trace. Wreckage, lifeboats, oil slick something. Yet weeks of searches turned up nothing. It was as if the sea had swallowed Cyclops' hull, erasing every clue. For families and officials, the silence was unbearable. Theories began almost immediately. Some blamed German U-boats, as World War I was still raging. Others suspected sabotage or mutiny. In time, the lack of evidence gave rise to wilder claims that the ship had fallen victim to forces within the Bermuda Triangle. The truth, however, remained hidden, as elusive as the wreck itself. The Navy launched an official inquiry. Records show investigators considered structural failure, overloading, storms, and enemy action. But none could be confirmed. The final report was blunt. No trace of the ship has ever been found. For the Navy, it was a rare admission of defeat, a mystery unsolved, despite every effort to explain it. Some reports hinted at problems before departure. Crew members allegedly complained about Captain George Worley's erratic behavior. Known for a harsh temper and strict discipline, he was respected by some, but disliked by many. Rumors of low morale spread, fueling theories of mutiny, yet no evidence ever surfaced to prove conflict aboard led to disaster. Captain Worley himself was an enigma. Born Johann Wichmann in Germany, he emigrated to the United States and changed his name. Though naturalized, his heritage raised suspicions during World War I. Some speculated that his loyalties were divided, and whispers accused him of secretly aiding Germany. But investigations never proved sabotage or treason. The cargo of manganese also raised concerns. It was denser than coal, harder to stabilize. If improperly loaded, it could have shifted suddenly, capsizing the ship. Survivors from other vessels later described how our cargoes could behave unpredictably, especially in rough seas. For some, this was the most logical explanation: a tragic accident magnified by poor balance. Yet weather records from March 1918 complicate the theory. While storms raged in the Atlantic that year, no severe system was logged along Cyclops' expected route at that exact time. Moderate squalls were possible, but nothing strong enough to sink a ship of her size outright. This absence of storms made her disappearance even harder to explain. Another theory centered on structural failure. Cyclops was a large ship, but her design had limitations. Some reports claimed her central I-beam had cracks, raising doubts about her durability under heavy loads. If true, the stress of 10,000 tons of ore could have caused catastrophic failure. But again, without wreckage, this remained speculation rather than proof. German U-boats were active in the Atlantic, sinking Allied ships with torpedoes. Could Cyclops have been targeted? The possibility loomed large in 1918, but post-war German records showed no submarine claimed her destruction. For a Navy ship of that size to vanish without survivors or debris, enemy action seemed unlikely, though wartime suspicion kept the idea alive. Families of the 306 men aboard were left in anguish. Letters stopped arriving. Widows and children waited at ports in vain. The Navy offered no comfort beyond acknowledging the loss. In a time when communication was already slow, the sudden silence stretched endlessly. For many, not knowing was worse than confirmed death. The mystery deepened as the war ended. Dozens of ships sunk by submarines were eventually accounted for. Cyclops was not among them. The absence of a claim, a wreck, or survivors distinguished her disappearance from normal wartime losses. She stood alone as a ship erased without a trace, setting her apart in naval history. In later decades, the Bermuda Triangle became a convenient explanation. Authors connected Cyclops to later vanishings in the region, framing it as the Triangle's most famous victim. While compelling for books and documentaries, the Navy never accepted paranormal theories. For them, the loss remained tragic, but explainable through natural or human causes. Still, the disappearance of USS Cyclops grew into legend. For storytellers, it embodied the sea's unpredictability. For scientists, it highlighted the challenges of maritime investigation. And for families, it was a wound that never fully healed. A ship once hailed as the Navy's pride became its greatest unforgettable, and forever tied to the Atlantic's deep silence. Cyclops wasn't the only ship of her kind. She had sister vessels, the Proteus-class colliers. Strangely, two of them, USS Proteus and USS Nirasalso, vanished during World War II under mysterious circumstances. Both were carrying ore cargoes. Both disappeared without distress calls. These losses deepened suspicions that something about their design made them vulnerable. The link between Cyclops and her sisters fascinated naval historians. Could structural weaknesses have doomed all three? Or did heavy ore cargo simply create the same risk repeatedly, with no wrecks recovered? Theories remained inconclusive. The eerie pattern, however, strengthened the legend. 3 nearly identical ships, 3 disappearances. No survivors, no debris, no answers. Despite countless expeditions, the wreck of Cyclops has never been found. Sonar sweeps across suspected areas turned up nothing. The ocean floor is vast, uneven, and in many places deeper than early technology could probe. Modern surveys have narrowed possibilities, but the Atlantic still guards its secrets, hiding steel hulls beneath layers of sand and silt. Oceanographers note that searching for a wreck that vanished over a century ago is daunting. Currents shift debris, sediment buries structures, and time corrodes evidence. Even a ship as massive as Cyclops can vanish beneath the Atlantic floor. Without precise coordinates, the task is like looking for a single grain in a desert. The story also reflects how the human mind processes uncertainty. When answers don't exist, imagination fills the void. For sailors of old, it was sea monsters. For 20th century readers, it became the Bermuda Triangle. The real explanation might be mundane, but mystery itself has a strange power, making the Cyclops legend larger than the ship itself. The psychological impact on the Navy was profound. Losing a ship without explanation shook confidence. War demands predictability, yet here was chaos. The Navy had to assure the public and sailors alike that such events were rare. Official silence often replaced speculation. But silence also fueled rumors, ensuring Cyclops remained a ghost on the sea. In later years, authors sensationalized the tale. Books framed Cyclops as proof of supernatural forces, fueling decades of triangle obsession. The ship's sheer size made her the perfect candidate for myth. If even a vessel that big could vanish, then nothing was safe. Such framing turned tragedy into spectacle, amplifying fear far beyond fact. Historians, however, emphasized the human cost. Cyclops was not just steel and cargo. It carried sailors, officers, and civilian passengers. Each name represented a life cut short, a family left waiting for news that never came. Behind the myth lies a sobering truth. 306 people were lost, and their stories deserve remembrance beyond folklore. Technology may one day solve the riddle. Advances in deep-sea mapping and underwater drones have revealed wrecks thought lost forever. Titanic was found after 7 decades. Other warships have been discovered in trenches once considered unreachable. For Cyclops, hope lingers that sonar or submersibles might one day finally bring closure. Until then, Cyclops remains a legend, balanced between history and mystery. Her story is retold in classrooms, documentaries, and articles, each time reshaped by the storyteller. Facts anchor the narrative, but unanswered questions keep it alive. That tension between truth and speculation ensures the disappearance of USS Cyclops will endure as one of the sea's greatest unsolved puzzles. In the centuries since Cyclops vanished, theories have multiplied. Some are grounded in engineering, others in pure speculation. Every explanation, from shifting cargo to paranormal forces, reflects humanity's need to make sense of the senseless. Without wreckage, the truth remains out of reach, leaving imagination free to roam across the dark waters of the Atlantic. One compelling possibility remains overloading. The manganese ore was far denser than coal, Cyclops' usual cargo. If unevenly loaded, a sudden shift could have destabilized the ship. Add even a moderate squall, and capsizing becomes possible. It's not as mysterious as sea monsters or triangles, but it's a scenario consistent with maritime accidents throughout history. Still, the silence remains haunting. Even capsized ships often manage a distress call. That Cyclops sent none raises questions. Some suggest it happened so quickly, the crew had no chance. Others argue equipment failure prevented communication. In either case, the absence of radio contact remains one of the most chilling aspects of the disappearance. Modern research has also examined the manganese ore itself, under certain conditions, or can generate heat, causing spontaneous combustion or structural stress. While rare, similar cargoes have caused other maritime incidents. If Cyclops carried such a volatile load, it might have compromised her safety. The problem is, no physical evidence exists to confirm this theory. Speculation about German involvement still survives. World War I created paranoia, and Captain Worley's German heritage fueled rumors. Yet post-war archives revealed no U-boat attack and no German record of involvement. While conspiracy theories attract attention, most historians dismiss them. The truth seems less about enemies abroad and more about flaws within the ship itself. The legacy of Captain Worley also clouds the narrative. Accounts from crew and acquaintances describe him as eccentric, sometimes erratic. His strict leadership style may have created tension. Yet, in fairness, many captains of that era were equally harsh. Whether his personality contributed to the tragedy remains unprovable, but it continues to color the ship's mythology. For the families, none of this mattered. They wanted closure, not speculation. Wives wrote letters to the Navy, begging for answers. Children grew up never knowing what became of their fathers. For them, Cyclops was not a puzzle or a legend. It was an empty chair at the table, a grief without resolution. Over time, the loss became part of the larger Bermuda Triangle mythos. Cyclops was retold as the triangle's earliest and largest victim, giving the legend an anchor in real history. But this narrative often overshadowed the sober reality. A ship was gone, with hundreds aboard, and the real causes were likely natural, not supernatural. The fascination endures because the sea itself is a character in the story. Vast, unpredictable, and indifferent, the ocean swallows evidence as easily as ships. Cyclops became a symbol of that power, Her disappearance reminds us that for all our technology, humans are still vulnerable before nature's scale, and some answers remain forever hidden. Today, the mystery of Cyclops is studied not only by historians but by oceanographers and engineers. Each new attempt to explain her loss is also an effort to improve maritime safety. Lessons learned from speculation about cargo, structure, or leadership help prevent future tragedies. In this way, even an unsolved disaster contributes to progress at sea. For Dina B., the loss of Cyclops remains a cautionary tale. Despite decades of advances in shipbuilding and navigation, her story is a reminder that even the mightiest vessel can vanish. Her disappearance highlights the vulnerabilities of human engineering when confronted by nature's unpredictability and the limits of early 20th century technology. The Cyclops tragedy also shaped how the Navy documented accidents. Later reports on lost ships included far more technical detail, ensuring future investigators had better records. While this did not solve her mystery, it ensured lessons were learned. Cyclops may never have been found, but her shadow guided improvements in accountability and safety. For many Americans, Cyclops symbolizes the price of war beyond the battlefield. She never fired a shot, never engaged an enemy, yet her disappearance claimed more lives than many combat encounters. Her fate illustrates how danger at sea is not only about combat, but also about the silent risks of nature and navigation. In popular culture, Cyclops remains a staple of maritime mystery documentaries. She appears in books about the Bermuda Triangle, in TV specials about naval history, and in speculative works about disappearances. Each retelling reshapes her story slightly, ensuring new generations discover her legend. The mystery thrives because people are drawn to what cannot be explained. Yet behind the drama lies humanity. The 306 people aboard were sons, fathers, brothers each, with lives and futures cut short. Their names are less often remembered than the ships, but they are the true heart of the tragedy. Remembering Cyclops is also remembering them, honoring the lives lost to history's silence. Modern technology may still bring answers. Autonomous underwater vehicles now scan ocean floors, once unreachable. Artificial intelligence processes sonar data at unprecedented speed. These tools have discovered long-lost wrecks before. For Cyclops, hope remains that one day her final resting place will be revealed, giving closure where speculation has reigned for more than a century. But even if she is never found, Cyclops has already achieved immortality. Her story embodies the enduring mystery of the sea. She has become more than a ship. She is legend, caution, and symbol. Through her, we remember that the ocean remains Earth's last frontier, still capable of humbling human ambition. The disappearance also reflects a timeless truth. Mystery itself captivates us. When we cannot find answers, we invent them. Cyclops became victim of U-boats, sabotage, structural failure, or supernatural triangles, depending on the storyteller. This adaptability keeps the tale alive, proving that unsolved tragedies have cultural lives long after they fade from history books. In the end, USS Cyclops represents the collision of fact and myth. She was a steel ship carrying ore and men, but she also became a ghost story carried across generations. Both realities coexist, feeding each other. She is remembered not only for what happened, but for what we still do not know. So next time you hear waves crash against a harbor wall, think of Cyclops. Think of her journey cut short. Aircrew lost her story unfinished. She reminds us that the sea holds both beauty and terror, mystery and truth. And some questions, even in the age of satellites, remain swallowed by the deep.